right. Good morning, everyone. Hey, thank you for joining today's cybersecurity webinar, partnered with Cisco System. So I guess we're here to talk about authentication, and password is something that we're very familiar with, as we have been using it for centuries as our standard authentication method to protect our information. However, many of us have been asked many times, what should our password standards be? And how many characters should we use? And often we have many different opinions. And as we know, computer systems only know how to grant access to whoever enters a credential properly. And who do we know actually the person behind it is who we say they are, right? So this lack of proof of identity is an obvious flaw in passwords today. DataVox has actually worked with many customers in the past that have experienced breaches due to credentials stolen by account takeover or many other methods. And how do we enhance our digital authentication process, whether it is on-prem services or in the cloud? And that's the reason why here today. We're to discuss about how multi-factor authentication can better secure our identification process with a combination of authentication factors. So please welcome Lauren from our Cisco Duo Central Partner Manager. Lauren?
Thanks, Paul. And thanks to the DataVox team for having us here today. I'm Lauren Mercado. I'm the Central Partner Account Manager here for Duo Security, and I'm with Chris DeWitt, my partner SE. So I'm going to get into the agenda briefly and go through a little bit of what Chris and I are going to be speaking about today. Really, I think the biggest thing is that we want to address the remote workforce and how Duo is helping with that, along with Zero Trust and some of the other feature sets that we have provided and also added in the last 6 months to a year. I'd also like to talk about user experience, what that demo looks like. This is actually on a public website, so we'll be able to go through that with you, and you guys can try that out post this webinar, as well as also working with your DataVox team. I also do want to point out that we're going to be doing a little more of the technical side in regards to policy setting as well. So again, Chris will be leading that conversation, and you guys will be able to learn how easy it is to set policies and also customize your employees' ability to go through or authenticate any critical applications. So Chris, I'm going to pass it to you.
Thanks, Lauren. And hello, everybody, and thanks again, DataVox, for hosting this. As Lauren mentioned, I'm Chris DeWitt. I'm her SE. I'm also based out of Denver. I've been in IT for about, well, I guess, 21 years now, so security architect for most of that portion of time. So a lot of you probably have seen a slide much like this, modern perimeter. It's pretty much been moving out further and further for, well, the last 15 or 20 years now. So everything's not just sitting on-prem like it once was. And this next slide kind of actually speaks to that. So if we roll the clock back 15 years and probably before then, almost everybody was working on-prem. All your computers were in a controlled environment. All the monitoring controls were all there as well. So there was a reasonably decent level of trust within that environment. They might have had an optional access for a VPN, but probably wasn't used a lot at that point. Then as VPN and services kind of started moving further and further out from the data center, you can see here that, well, we still have that office environment. We still have the controls, the VPN access controls to those remote users. So you generally had a secure line of communication, but things still kind of got a little fuzzy once you moved out into the cloud. So again, you generally had pretty good metrics and controls for most of these VPN users as well as the in-house users. But gosh, what did you do with these guys maybe you had work-issued computers that were floating around out here, and then maybe these BYOD devices were also accessing applications that maybe you don't really have a whole lot of control over. So this is where multi-factor comes into play. And if you're not familiar with multi-factor, so like mentioned before, basically you have a username and password. That's something you know. Also something that can quite easily be stolen. Multi-factor basically something you know plus something that you have. So in this case, maybe if you go old school, like the RSA tokens, key fobs, etc. And then as we move into more modern times, where Duo invented and brought out the Duo push methodology that we do through our Duo mobile app. So kind of how the Duo mobile portion works. So again, over here you have your cloud apps, maybe your on-prem apps. You've got a user that you maybe don't really know where they're going to be at. They could be at the office one day, or they could be on the other side of the world. So they do a standard. The step one is log into whatever the app is. Step two, if the app is integrated with Duo, and Duo, of course, is located in the cloud, and I'll get into some of the policy stuff later on in the presentation. Basically, all those policy checks on if this device, the hygiene's up to snuff, they're running on the right version of software, browsers, etc. That's all checked, and then basically that authentication, that secondary or multi-factor authentication hits their phone or whatever they're using. Could be a YubiKey, whatever. Once they approve that, it basically goes back through and approves the access to the application, and then the user has access to whatever application or service that they might be trying to access. So that said, that's kind of just a rough overview of how multi-factor works and what that flow kind of looks like from a user perspective. So from a authenticator perspective, Duo, we're kind of proud of the fact that we have probably the widest selection of authentication types out there. Currently, you can see that we have eight listed here. So you got push and soft token, which are associated with the Duo mobile app, which I'll get into in a little bit later. We also support SMS and phone callbacks. Those are kind of frowned upon by NIST because they're generally not considered particularly secure, but in some environments they're required. U2F, that's your touch to authenticate, so things like YubiKeys or Google Titans, those are all certainly supported as well. Wearables, so if you've got your Apple Watch or an Android wearable that supports the Duo app, you can certainly use those to complete an authentication as well. Of course, we support biometrics, so if the phone or tablet that the user might be using supports biometrics, that can be utilized for authentication as well. There are some touch to authenticate options that are coming out with that tied into it as well. And last but not least, of course, we do have our hardware tokens. So if you have environments that maybe, I guess I've dealt with it in some manufacturing and some education, where maybe they don't want to issue mobile phones, or they don't want mobile phones in some environment. They want hardware tokens. We can support that as well. And we actually do have a ninth that's not on here. It's kind of a differentiator for us. A lot of our competitors don't have it, but in the event that all of these authentication types don't work for some reason, so maybe their phone went dead, they lost their phone, et cetera, we can actually issue bypass codes to a user to permit authentication, and those can be set in various ways. It can be just allow them to log in once, or it can be set to allow them to log in over a certain period of time, et cetera.
Hey, Chris, we do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Does this multi-factor authentication introduce latency due to multiple hops?
Not really. We generally pride ourselves on that, and I'll actually demonstrate it here later in the demo. Where our authentication process generally is in the sub-second range. So if there's a delay, it's the delay is usually picking up the phone and touching the OK to authenticate. So again, sub-second delay. That's about it. So not really any hops per se. There's a request that goes out to Duo. Duo does a check, sends out that authentication request to the phone, and then they're instantly logged in. And I'll show that here in a live demo as well. So that's it. Lauren, do you want to take this one, or I can? Happy to go over with it.
So I'm going to go through a few different features that have been with Duo and also added in the last 6 to 8 months. And then we will get into more of the user experience demos. So device trust. So we've been talking about verifying the trust of any device. This is something that you can access off of your Duo mobile device in a simple click to go to their security feature. And you can see that, there are a few different things that you'll be in control of. So obviously, is your OS up to date? I can tell you myself, many of the times my OS might not be up to date, so I'll be at 85% on my security checkup, just meaning that, it's a friendly reminder that I do need to update my OS. And then you can see multiple other options below. So Face ID, is your dual mobile app up to date, screen lock, and is your device not jailbroken? All of these features too, Chris is going to be able to show you from a policy perspective a little bit later, but your admin has the ability to pick and choose which one they would like to allow throughout this whole process to ensure that, again, when you're accessing your critical applications, that you're not having a jailbroken phone accessing that, or maybe you're ensuring that your employees have a screen lock that's enabled. So again, a great feature to have, an option to have, and another way to control maybe some of those BYO devices or those corporate-owned devices. Dual device health. So this is another portion of it. So this was just released in November. Again, going back to our BYOD, we're unsure if employees are also using their personal devices or corporate-owned, but at the same time, in the top right corner, you'll be able to click the Duo symbol, and you'll be able to pull this up yourself. So you can see that this is actually showing a Mac OS and also Windows. So we do support both. And as you can see, again, same thing. These are policies that can be set within our admin panel so that you can ensure that every device is treated similar in the fact of who is, again, accessing those applications and how are they accessing those applications.
Thanks, Lauren. And I will jump into the actual demo here. Let me see, my phone went to sleep on me. So up here in the corner, I've just got an older Android phone that basically I use just a mirror to kind of show what things look like. And like Lauren was talking about, anybody can look to see what their device hygiene looks like. So I do the security checkup. You can see I'm running on an old Android version there. So we're really big into educating the end user and basically informing them of what the hygiene state of their devices are. So that was the Duo mobile app, which has been around for quite some time. And as Lauren mentioned, right below here, you're actually looking at my system. So you can see that my Windows is up to date. I do have a password. And again, with all of that stuff, all we're using is the security APIs to collect on both of these. So I guess kind of the key thing here is, especially with this COVID stuff going on, a lot of people are working from home that normally wouldn't be, and maybe a lot of them probably don't have corporate issue devices. The nice thing is here you can ensure that the end user actually has some basic security set up. We're not doing anything intrusive, so we're not collecting device information, that kind of thing. We're not looking at emails or any of that stuff. So your end users can rest assured that Duo was not actually collecting any actual information on them. That said, I will move right into the demos. So one thing I do like to point out here is anybody is free to use this. There's no signups or anything like that to do. It's totally free. So that would be at demo.duo.com. You can certainly, we don't have a lot of time here today, but you can go and kind of kick the tires on what our SSO deployment might look like. We also have a number of click-through demos, and I will show some of these in a little bit. You don't have to install anything. They're all browser-based. You can just click through them and actually see how the multi-factor portion works, plus get kind of a quick shot at seeing how some of our features work. And then as we go down to the bottom, this is just a small subset of the apps that we natively support. The only difference between these and the ones above is these are more live. Again, you don't have to sign up for anything. The one thing you will need is a device, either a phone or a tablet, running the Duo mobile app in order to actually run through these. So real quick, I'm just going to kind of go through that push. So there was the question on delay. You can kind of ignore the password portion. A little bit of this is automated, but it does actually utilize the same stuff that you would in a live environment. So I'm just going to log in like you normally would. I'm going to do this real quick. I actually have a couple multi-factor devices, so send me a push. I'm going to get a notification on my phone and approve. So if you're concerned about a delay, that was a delay. So pretty much about as fast as I could hit the approve button. So this time I'm going to go through this just a little bit slower so you can kind of get a better idea of what's going on. So I'm just going to pick an application. So let's just kind of, for argument's sake, let's just say maybe there was a breach within your environment late on a Friday. Maybe you're sitting at home and you caught some email that said that something happened at the office and they're going to institute Duo. Don't know what that is, but hey, that's nice. It's going to add this thing called MultiFactor. So let's just pretend I'm logging in for the first time on Monday morning at home. Let's see. Never seen this before. So I'm going to log in, and you're basically going to get prompted. So of course, this Acme stuff, the logos can be completely customized. If the user wants to get additional information, they can certainly get that right here. They're going to get prompted to start the setup. You can, of course, customize all this information if you so choose, but essentially, I'm going to walk through what it's like to enroll as a user for the first time in Duo. So again, it's going to go, well, what kind of authenticator or what kind of device are you going to add? So here you have options for mobile phone, tablet. You can use a landline. It could be a mobile phone as well, so you can get that phone callback feature wherever you want to go. Security key, so if you want to add those UB keys or what have you, you can certainly do that. Touch ID, you'll notice it's grayed out on mine. That's because I'm running a Windows machine that doesn't support the Windows Hello feature, but essentially if you had a MacBook, you could do Touch ID. If you had a Windows machine that supports that Hello feature, or Chromebook, you can use facial recognition, so you could utilize that authentication as well. So moving forward, I'm just going to select a tablet. It's going to prompt me to as far as what I'm using. So this device happens to be an Android, so I'm going to select Android. I will continue. At this point, it's going to instruct me to go to whatever store to download and install the app. I already have the Duo mobile app over here, as you can see. So I'm going to select I have it installed. And at this point, it's going to ask me to scan the QR code. So basically at this point, I'm just going to hit the little plus button over here to turn on my camera. And again, I'm doing this live. So I'll scan that QR code. And once I get the green checkbox, that means this device is added. So you can see over here, I got the Duo demo. You just added this account. I'll continue. So here, this is a great thing too. So all this happened without a help desk. So what happens if I want to add another device? So let's say I've got a UB key. So that'd be a security key down here. I'll hit continue, and I'll hit continue again. Now I'm gonna turn my camera on just so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So you can see I've got a little flashing green light. That's my UB key right there. So I will touch it, and then it's going to ask me to tap it one more time, and then all I have to do is allow it. And right there, you can see that I just enrolled in Android and UB key, and I can continue on and on and on and on. We actually currently support an unlimited number of authenticators, so if they wanted to add 100 phones or whatever your users want to do, they can certainly have that as well. At this point, I can continue to log in, and I can do the push, or I can do a UB key if I so choose. I'm going to cancel out of that. And again, over here, it's all self-service. If the user wants to add or remove devices, they can certainly do that here as well. So I'll do what I did before. I'm going to select send me a push, and I'm going to go through this a little bit slower again. So you'll see basically once you log in, it's going to give me the information that, okay, this is the application I'm logging into. So this is kind of critical. So let's just say I'm out having dinner or something like that with some of my friends. It's 9 o'clock at night and I'm at a restaurant, and all of a sudden this authentication comes in. Okay, well, maybe I didn't do it. Let's say I do happen to live in Denver, but let's say it says Rio de Janeiro or something like that. That probably looks a little fishy, so I want to probably deny that. So the nice thing is well, let's say for argument's sake, let's say Denver, maybe I did accidentally click on something, I can hit it was a mistake and it'll stop the login right there. In the case that I said, well, what if I saw Rio de Janeiro as far as the location? Well, that means I probably got phished. Somebody's stolen my credentials somehow. I want to hit it, seems fraudulent. And I took a little too long there, so I'll just do that real quick again. Oop, there we go. So I could turn that. I could say if it was the Rio login and I'm in Denver, I could hit it's fraudulent. It'll stop the login. But in this case, it is me. Once again, I'm going to continue to log into Office 365, and here you can see that I'm at my home page. And that's it. But basically, so you saw how a push went, plus what a manual enrollment would be from an end user perspective, which is relatively easy. Any questions floating out there, Lauren?
No, just a comment about the YubiKey. So they have released a biometrics feature with the YubiKey, and this is something that can be bought through DataVox as well. So it is purchased through a third-party company. Duo specifically does not sell YubiKeys, but another great option as an authentication method.
Thanks, Lauren. So just kind of to show some of the stuff before we kind of get into the rest of the presentation, and I'll kind of try to go through this quickly since we are a little bit short on time. So when we're talking about some of the policy controls, so what a user might see. So let's say, and again, these are all click through, so you can click anywhere. It's going to kind of prompt you where you're supposed to click so you can see how this all works. But you're going to get a presentation of here's a laptop. I'm going to log in like I normally would. You're going to see the iframe that I showed you before with all the same choices. It'll give you options as far as what you want to send to, but you'll see down here this orange banner. It says if it's too much of an eye chart, it just says your browser is 20 days out of date. We're going to actually inform and instruct the user to update, and this is all set through policy, so you can set whatever the expiration is for your browsers or OSs manually if you so choose. So let's update it. Well, if we kind of scroll in here, it's telling me my Firefox browser is out of date. The latest version is recommended. Note, recommended, not required. We'll get into that in a minute. My version's 20 days out of date, and we're actually going to provide them a link on how to update the Firefox. So all I have to do is click on it, and they can update. Since this is a recommended and not a require, you'll notice down here we actually have an ability to skip. So if they want to continue to attempt their login, they can send a push. They're going to get a presentation for a phone just like we were before. Click approve. It's going to ask, are you sure you don't want to update? And they can click skip again and then continue on to Outlook just as they normally would. So that's kind of a soft block. Now let's say it's a more critical application that they were trying to access. So in this case, you're going to see kind of the same thing. However, instead of Outlook, this time we're trying to access SSL VPN. Same deal, just click where the login is. You'll notice right away, since this is a more critical application, we're going to say, we're sorry, this access is not allowed because you have out-of-date software. So similar messaging, but we're going to provide them, and this is all going to pop up on the screen. We're going to see what's allowed. So out-of-date browsers are a security concern. So this time you see latest version is required versus the last one, which was recommended. This is going to force them to update before they can access. And again, we're going to give them that information. If they click on here, they happen to be using Firefox again, we're going to take them to the Mozilla site and they can download Firefox as the policy required. So pretty easy, informative, doesn't leave the users in the dark, and they can continue to keep their device updated as would be desired by the company.
Hey, Chris, I got a quick question.
Sure.
As an admin, can you set a limit to the number of authentication or authenticator devices?
Yeah, you can certainly, let's see, the number, actually I'd have to check on the number portion, but you can, if you wanted to limit them to specific authentication, so if you only wanted them I guess as I demonstrated earlier, if you only wanted them to use the push and maybe YubiKeys, you can narrow it down to just those specific devices, and we can either permit based on OS. So if you didn't want to let Android devices as authenticators or as application access devices, we can block based on the OS as well.
Perfect.
And
then we also, there was something else brought up in regards to the actual integration of Duo. Just so you guys know, we will be doing that in the next demo, which is the admin panel.
And I guess that said, I will kind of continue on with the deck.
Okay, perfect. So as you guys know, I mean, there's always a bunch of statistics out there about security risks, what happens with traditional MFA, and this is something that I do want to bring up in regards to a very, I think, extreme statistic in regards to breaches. So 81% of breaches leverage either stolen or weak passwords. So just, speaking to some of the integrations that we have and applications that we use internally, Duo and Cisco use LastPass. So that's another way that, again, we can ensure that we're protecting those passwords, and then on top of it, using MFA with that. And then we have at least 5 to 6 compliance requirements that we go through with the regulations. So if you guys are retail or healthcare or whatever it might be, even Fed, we do have all of these and continue to ensure that we keep up with compliance. So as you can see, ISO, NIST, PCI, HIPAA, GDPR. If you do have questions, this again is available on documentation publicly at duo.com, and you can search compliance requirements or regulations. So really great thing to touch on, and I wanted to ensure that you guys knew about that as well.
There we go.
So overall, we've gone through the trusted users, what that means to you. So obviously strong authentication. We want to make sure we know who is accessing our applications. Trusted devices. So we've talked about the 2 different features that have been added from a mobile and also from a personal device, or I should say a computer. And then also every application. So not only are we looking at cloud applications, we're looking at on-prem, and also we work with custom applications. So even as a customer, if you guys have specific custom applications, that is possible, and we will help you guys through that from with our tech group. And zero trust for the workforce. So again, I know this is a buzzword, but I do want to point out that Cisco was named one of the leaders of the zero trust or of zero trust in general with Forrester. So not only did Cisco have a very vast security portfolio from what you guys already know, obviously for endpoints, email security, Umbrella, adding Duo to that though establishes that user trust, gains visibility, you look at the device trustworthiness, enforce adaptive policies, which we're going to go into a little bit with the admin panel demo, and all of that together creates that great security posture from a zero trust perspective. And overall, this is really just another way to speak to what Chris was scrolling through on the duo.com/docs page. So again, just another look at all the different applications. We have 240 plus integrations throughout all these different categories. So just another touch point, just to kind of let you guys know all the different integrations. As you can see, many of them too, we've had prior to the Cisco acquisition. So just to kind of let you know where you're seeing some of maybe those competitive names, we still acquisition with Cisco as well.
Hey, Lauren, I guess, was there another question beyond, I guess there was Jay asked something about the authenticators. Was there anything, we support an unlimited number? It looks like I'm getting another question.
Yeah, can you also limit the type of authenticator, which you did address? So you can specifically say that in the policy settings, so you can do only phone or only UV And then do you have a list of apps that can be integrated with Duo? So yes, we do. Again, that is through our duo.com/doc, and we can also share that with the DataVox team to share with you post this webinar. So we can definitely make sure to do that as well, and I see that Paul also answered that question.
And I'll approach that subject in the admin demo as well. So yeah, we support we support all of that.
Perfect. Okay. And then really just wanted to touch on this before we go into the admin panel demo, but you know, really, so again, we've been adding more and more integrations, and this is just an additional add-on. So we already have integrations with Active Directory with Microsoft, and now we have integrations with Microsoft Intune and Meraki Systems Manager from an MDM perspective. So this was released May 2020. So again, all of these system managers can be used with Duo. We can then identify, you know, is the device managed, and then of course then push you to that application. So that's, and we will also kind of be speaking about that a little bit further. And then lastly, you're probably wondering, you know, hey, what are the different features of Duo? How do I get all of these features? What are the different flavors? So there's 3 different flavors of Duo. There's actually 4. So Duo also offers a free version of MFA with anyone that uses 10 users or less. And you can click our free trial link and you're able to get that. Anything above 10 users though, will have, you know, you can choose between Duo MFA, which obviously provides your basics, MFA and SSO cloud apps. Access is actually one of our more popular versions. So as you can see, there's a lot more features. We had adaptive authentication, device visibility, device remediation. And then lastly, we have Duo Beyond, which really gives you the full deal of all the different features that Duo has offered, released, benefits, and that also includes many of our integrations with Cisco ICE, and for endpoints, and then many of, like, you know, the customized apps as well. So you can see that also trusted endpoints and VPN list remote access was added to that list too.
And it looks like we got a quick question. Somebody's asking about, is this compatible with iPhone as well as Android? Yes, we support both OSs fully. So yeah, rest assured you're good to go with pretty much anything out there as far as a mobile device. And Lauren, I think I'm gonna just in the view of time, I think we're probably gonna have to bounce through the instead of doing the some of the case studies.
And just so you guys know, we're going to be able to share this full presentation with you. So you will be seeing that post again. DataVox will be sending that out. So we're going to jump right into the admin panel, which again, where you'll see policy settings, you'll have a dashboard, and so Chris is going to go through that. So Chris, I'll give it to you.
Thanks, Lauren. And just real quick, so as far as documentation, it's pretty simple, straightforward. Duo.com/docs. That's where all of our native integration information is. So I'll just scroll down here a little ways. I won't go through all these because, well, like Lauren mentioned earlier, I think we're north of 240 native integrations here. But right here, you can see our remote access VPN section. We got Cisco, Meraki, Akamai, Juniper, Palo, whoever you might have out there. Support all of those, and if you have something that's outside of these, we do have generic authentication for those VPN solutions as well. Microsoft, they're also IDP, obviously, which since we cover their entire product portfolio, actually cover a little bit more. We actually can put MFA directly on servers, laptops, desktops, if you so choose. We also support MFA on Mac OS as well as Linux if you want to add that there. But web applications, you can see there, identity providers. So we support all of these as well as some of your generic providers out there. Microsoft obviously is part of this as well. If you have one or more of these and you're consolidating or you're migrating from one to another, we can support that effort as well. The nice thing is once Duo is in front of any or all of these, it makes the authentication process look exactly the same to your end users. So it doesn't matter what you're using for an IDP in the background. If Duo is in front of it, we're going to kind of unify that authentication process. So that really helps for, I guess, that sense of security, but it also helps in adoption since the users are seeing continuity through that login process. But again, I'm not going to go through these, all the cloud services out there. You can see that we have tons and tons and tons of them. So if you have something out there that you want to protect with MFA, we support all of these right out of the box. Most of them you can have secured with Duo probably in less than a half hour in most cases. And then usually there's a big question on, well, hey, what if we've got some home-built or in-house applications that are custom? We can certainly support putting MFA in front of those with our SDK or API feature set as well. With that said, I will get into the dashboard. So when Lauren was talking about the licensing, so there's Duo MFA, Duo Access, and Beyond. So Duo Access and Duo Beyond, or I'd say Duo Access is actually kind of where the rubber really meets the road for Duo. That's where you get device insight. So when you log into the Duo admin panel, which is what we're looking at here, you just get some of your basic information you'd expect. Here's some of your bypass users, locked out users, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, this is what we've got for out-of-date OS that's floating around in our environment. Authentication permitted, denied, and you can get kind of a basic look at the authentication log as well. Or if you want to click here, you can get the full authentication log. And consequently, there's a report section over here. And yes, we can forward all of our logs off to wherever you'd like to. If you've got a SIM, I'm sure we're probably going to be talking about SecureX more and more as it comes out here in the not too distant future. We also are going to be supporting that as well. All of those can be forwarded off for advanced analysis if you so choose. But that said, so what I'm saying, Duo Access and Duo Beyond, so that's where the device insight portion comes into play. And this is where we can actually identify which OSs are floating around out there, what's the basic state of affairs. So everything you're seeing here up in the kind of that pop-up, this is all defined by policy. So you as an administrator can define what you consider out of date or not. So we're not just going to ham-handedly start forcing updates. This is all customizable, and I'll get into that a little bit with the policies. So not going to dwell on that too much since we're kind of squeaking down on time. Policies. So Duo is licensed per user. So once you have a user's license, you can protect as many applications as you want. So whether you've got one application in your environment or 5,000 applications in your environment, you can protect as many as you want. Consequently, for each application, you can set up as many policies as you want. So if you've got different groups of users, admins, regular users, whatever you want to call them, you can define individual policies for each of those groups to customize them as you see fit. So all the policies are configured the same way. So here we happen to be looking at the global policy, but if I scroll down a little ways, we're going to start seeing the custom application policies. Here's one for LastPass. If I keep going down, we've got one for our ASA, SAML authentication, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll just pick the global policy just as an example. So you can set up your new user policy. So when you're doing a POC or maybe an initial rollout, we recommend setting allow access without 2FA because generally you're going to be testing with a smaller group of users. So whether it's 1 user, 5 users, 10 users, whatever it might be, they're going to generally enroll, and then they'll enroll with Duo, and then the rest of the user base that doesn't enroll with Duo is going to be able to log in without even knowing Duo is there. Once those test users have validated that, hey, we've got everything working the way we want to, you'll flip that switch to require enrollment, and then the rest of the user base will be required to enroll. Geolocation, you can force action depending on where they're at. So if they're, in this case, if they're in Canada, the UK, the United States, they're going to require 2FA. The default, of course, is to deny access, but let's just say I'm going to pick on China. I'm going to deny access to them completely. So granted, that's the default solution, but you can see how if you wanted to get granular, you could certainly do that as well. Device health application. So whether you're going to use that device health app, like I was showing earlier, so this is what's installed in my system. I can require it to check to see if the firewall's off or on, encryption, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, we do have, this last bit was actually added, I think it was the end of March, sorry, where we can actually check for endpoint security. As it's a new solution, we're a little limited right now in what we're checking for, but you can check for AMP, CrowdStrike, Symantec, Windows Defender, and I can assure you that since this is new, we'll be adding things as time goes on. So, and again, real simple checkboxes, easy to do. Operating systems, this is where you can essentially go in and define what you want to consider end of life, or if it's where you want to set that bar as far as code. For them, this happens to be Android. If I want to get rid of Android altogether, I can uncheck the box, and basically you can't use Android to authenticate or access applications, depending on what you want to do. Same thing goes for BlackBerry, Chrome. Here's iOS. As I scroll down, you'll see there's Linux, Mac OS. We can do the same thing, where you can force them to update immediately or after a certain period of time, if you so choose. Windows, exactly the same thing. So easy. Everything's pretty much easy. Click to drop down, so on and so forth. Same goes for browsers. Let's say for some reason, I probably don't want an Internet Explorer running in my environment anymore, so I probably don't want it accessing applications. I'm going to hit that checkbox to block those, so all of these browsers are blocked. And like the click-through demo I went through before, if this box is checked, it's just going to warn them that, hey, your browser's out of date. If you check this box, you can give them a period of time to update that. Same thing goes for plugins, so I won't beat that to death. When we get down to the authenticators, which this will kind of answer that question from before. So this is basically where you go to choose what they can use to authenticate. So in this case, they can use push, they can use the mobile passcodes, but they're not able to use phone callback. But if I wanted to turn it on, just check it. Security keys, if they want to use that web authn, they certainly could do that. Or if I wanted to turn on hardware tokens, and at any point when I change any of these settings, I can hit save policy. That policy is pushed out immediately. There's no delay there. And then of course the rest of it's kind of quick checkbox as far as do you want to turn it on, whether it's enabled or not. As far as mobile app, is the device tampered, screen lock, et cetera, encryption, device biometrics, and so on and so forth. And it looks like we're squeaking down on time, or I guess how are we doing on time?
We're almost at the 15-minute mark.
Okay.
I do have a couple questions, and this will probably lead us into the next part, Chris. So in regards to reports, can reports be automated and emailed?
Yes. Yeah, you can download them directly if you want to, or you can certainly utilize the admin API in order to automate the forwarding of any logs that you so desire. I guess I'm going to jump into this real quick too. So one of the other big questions that comes up is users. How do I get my users into the Duo system? So there's many ways to do that. So we provide a lot of options. They can add a user individually, so they can just punch in a username, add the user, and then they'll go through and enroll like I showed you before. You can do bulk enrollments. So in this case, you can put in a username and their email. And then, well, of course, they'll get an email. You can customize the logo if you so choose. You can customize the message. It's going to provide them an enrollment link, which is going to basically throw that QR code just like we talked about earlier. And then this basically, I think this supports up to like 50 users at a time. So not quite so it probably works for a small organization, or if you're working just with a test group, that's kind of a good way to go. And simply hit send enrollment link. You can import users with the CSV, so if you got a spreadsheet, you can certainly pull that in if you want to. But I'd say more commonly than anything, usually it's an automated process. So if you got an organization of any size, they're probably going to do a directory sync. So whether it's Azure, Active Directory, or or some other LDAP service, we can pull users in that way as well. So just, I guess I can probably touch on the application portion. Again, it's pretty quick and easy. So you can do a protect an application. Our single sign-on feature should be coming out here, our cloud-based single sign-on feature will be coming out here soon. So you can play with that if you sign up with the signup.duo.com and do a trial. But anyway, if you're trying to protect an application, you can click Applications, click Protect an Application here. You can hit the big blue button on the other side that says Protect an Application, and essentially this is where all the apps are going to be listed. So one of the nice things here is you can see that here's an app, on and on. The documentation to configure that is right here. So since Duo was part of the Cisco family, I'll just punch Cisco up in the search bar up here, and you can see all of the integrations that we support within the Cisco world. So let's just say I want to protect Cisco Radius VPN. I can hit Documentation. It's going to take me to basically that you'll see up here, duo.com/docs, but it's going to take me to the Cisco Radius portion. You can see all the integration steps here. Kind of the nice thing is we provide multiple ways to, I guess, digest this information. So if you're somebody that just wants to watch how the integration is done and then go about your business of integrating it, you can watch a full video on how to do that. Of course, you can follow the steps if you so choose. One thing that I do like, and we're pretty consistent about this with most of our documentation, and we're big about consistent and clear documentation. I love to go to the network diagram because you don't really even have to look at the configuration portion to see what some of the parts are going to be to integrate Duo. So, and you can kind of see what the flow is like. So you've got a user over here. They're going to put in their username and password as you'd expect. Since we're doing Cisco AnyConnect, they hit the ASA firewall. Since it's Radius, we will have a Duo Auth proxy. That's going to get installed somewhere in your environment. It's going to do exactly what it says. It's authentication proxy. So if I didn't say this earlier, we are not involved. Duo is not involved in primary authentication. The only thing that we grab during the authentication process is the username as far as the credentials are concerned. So that authentication request hits Duo Auth proxy. It goes and hits whatever authentication server you might have, either on-prem or off-site, depending on how you're configured. Assuming that authentication is completed, it'll go back to the auth proxy, which will proxy that connection out to Duo, so you don't have a direct connection out to from your authentication service directly to the cloud, which probably wouldn't be a wise decision. Anyway, once that authentication is approved, it's going to go out and hit those policies that I was talking about. It's going to do the validation of, okay, is this user is part of that group. They're trying to access XYZ application. It's doing the check on the phone. It's doing the check on the desktop, laptop, whatever they're accessing. Assuming that's all kosher, they're going to get the push or callback. Once that's authenticated, then basically the user gets authenticated into the system. Now, part of the reason I pointed this out to you is, let's say, okay, I'm showing you Radius. Well, let's say maybe I'm going to migrate from Radius to SAML, or maybe I don't have Radius. I just want to use SAML. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to AnyConnect. Again, oops, there we go. I'm going to hit that network diagram button, and you're going to see a little bit. It's going to be kind of the same, but just a hair different. So same process. Users trying to authenticate. That's AnyConnect. So there's the ASA. So since we're talking about SAML, it uses a little bit of a different proxy method. So SAML utilizes our Duo Access Gateway, which also supports our SSO feature. So if you want to use that before the cloud version is released, you can certainly do that as well. But again, all we're grabbing is the username. That authentication is completed and confirmed theoretically, and then it comes back and is proxied out to the Duo Cloud. And then that same process of checking the policies for the application, the device, the user, the hygiene, etc., that all occurs. The user does the push or callback, whatever they want to use. That process is complete, and they log into their application. So again, you can see what all the components are before you actually even get to them. And
So I have a few questions on my side, Chris.
Yeah.
So for authentication modes, can I build groups so I can classify different individuals or different auth methods?
Certainly, yeah, yeah. You can. So if you want to utilize your AD groups to break those groups up, you can do that as well. You can build manual groups within the Duo cloud admin panel as well. So yeah, total flexibility there. So let's say you've got 6 different groups accessing. Well, I guess we looked at Office 365. If you got 6 different groups, you can have. You maybe if you want to set something more stringent for people that are off-site, maybe they're using VPN or they're accessing Office 365 directly to access that O365 instance. Yeah, you could set even more stringent requirements for those people that are roaming, and when they come into the office, you can set it to maybe less stringent, or you can actually even you can select your internal subnets and bypass MFA altogether if you so choose. So yeah, we can get very granular to very loose with MFA to extremely rigid as far as device checks and user checks and health checks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, totally customizable. You can have as many policies per application or per group as you desire.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then one other question, is this purely focused towards apps, or can it be used and authenticate access to servers at the OS level, but no apps?
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, so I'll just pick on one of our click-through demos. So since we can protect Windows, Mac, and Linux authentication, yeah, and we could do that anywhere. So again, this is maybe a user on a laptop. They're at home. It's going to lead me through the click-through things, just like I guess the other ones would. So this is forcing me to do multi-factor authentication on a Windows machine. Again, so I can do a push. So I'm logging a request to my Windows login, and am I going to allow myself? Same rules apply as before. Approve, and they're going to get that prompt to authenticate, and then they can continue using their applications as they see fit. So that was just a login into a Windows machine. It could be a Windows server. Yeah. Any other ones out there?
I'm trying to look through here and just make sure I've got everybody. I don't think I see anything else. If you guys, I know we have about 1 more minute until I'm going to pass it back to Jessica. Any other questions out there? Let's see. I think I just. So someone had asked about the cost. So it is by user, but this is something that we will be addressing with DataVox. So you would purchase through DataVox, get your quote through DataVox. Obviously, it's very different from MFA to access to Beyond. And so we would recommend going that route. And so I know that DataVox, any of your account managers will be reaching out to you after this webinar. So they'll be able to give you a little bit more specifics on the pricing.
And since I got one more minute left, I'll just touch on something this will probably be released in January, or sorry, not January, July. Trust Monitor. So it's a new feature that we're working on at this point. Again, you can play with this it's in beta, public beta right now, but it basically provides telemetry on basically user behavior as well as device behavior, as well as what they're accessing, geolocation, et cetera. So I can see that this individual, their location is in New York. This person thinks somebody tried to log into their application fraudulently. So when I hit deny earlier on the Duo mobile app, it's just flagging that. It's showing that there's an IP address that doesn't really match up with where he normally logs in from, and it also shows that normally he uses Salesforce and Microsoft Azure Directory, but all of a sudden is now using Duo Access Gateway Launcher, which they don't normally use. So you can actually click and triage that if you so choose. So again, kind of gives you some additional telemetry on what some of that behavior is. So that said, I think that kind of wraps up my show and tell unless there's questions.
It does, yeah. There was one more. Can this multi-factor be broken or hacked? Chris, I know that you've had multiple roles in Duo? I don't know if you want to answer that fast, and then we'll push it to Jessica.
Well, I guess it kind of depends. I mean, you can, there are man-in-the-middle applications that could be installed within, say, your data center that theoretically would make any multi-factor vulnerable. I guess that kind of comes down to, I guess, monitoring your own environment. The likelihood is, I would say, exceedingly low, but I guess it depends on how well monitored and maintained your internal infrastructure is. I guess if that makes sense.
Okay. And Jessica, I'm going to let you take it because I know that we are past time. Thank you again for having us, though.
No, thank you. And I did see a couple extra questions come in. Any unanswered questions, we'll be sure to have the account manager follow up with you post-event. And with that said, we want to thank you all for joining today's webinar. As a reminder, the recording link for today's session will be emailed to all attendees 24 to 48 hours post-event. If you did enjoy today's session and would like to hear more, we do offer new webinars weekly. Please check our DataVox website for more information on upcoming sessions. That concludes our session for today. Thank you to Chris and Lauren for your time and a great presentation, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.